so encouraged by what God's doing through TPUSA Faith. And we know that we're in a battle. We're earnestly contending with God that He would show up and empower and encourage His church. That's what I want to speak with you briefly about this afternoon. The Church of Jesus Christ. Psalm 11 verse 3 says this, that if the foundations be destroyed, what will the righteous do? A few years ago, I was in a meeting with Dr. James Dobson. We were at Focus on the Family, and not sure why I was in the room, but while I was in a room, something happened that shook me to the core. Dr. Dobson was looking around this room at religious leaders from all over the country, and in that moment, he began to weep, tears rolling down his cheeks, and he said, you know what we've got to do? We've got to pray. I want to pray right now, he said. I want to pray that the church would awaken and take her rightful place. Until then, parachurch organizations have to stand in the gap, but we need to pray that the church would awaken and take her rightful place. I know this, there have been comments recently. Elon Musk said that Christianity is now toothless. And I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, you know what? It's not the message. It's more about the messengers of Christianity. We desperately need to pray that the church would awaken. The prophet Jeremiah recorded the fall of Jerusalem to the Babylonian armies and wrote these words that explained the terrible destruction of God's people. He wrote these words in the book of Lamentations, Judah did not consider her future, so her fall was astounding. Judah did not consider her future, so her fall was astounding. We gather here at a very sobering, stunning, significant time in history, you all. Most believe, and I do, that we are in a battle for the heart and soul of our nation. Many believe that we're living in a season of darkness. Dr. Dobson would call it a season of evil. I had a conversation recently with Jonathan Kahn, and Jonathan said in the interview, he said, Tim, I believe this is a time of shaking. He said, we've seen it in ancient times with a new manifesting now. Time of spiritual darkness is setting in motion, the transformation of a society. And isn't that true? Look around you, what we're seeing every day. It's destroying age-old standards of morality, he said. Values, perception, and faith. It's an unrelenting darkness that wants you to bow to its image. It doesn't seek just to exist, but it wants to grow and have total domination of language, perception, and everything. And if you don't assimilate and transform, we will cancel you. It's a culture of death, not light. I want to add something here for a moment. I also believe it's a time of apostasy, a time where those who invoke the name of God but live in opposition to it. There's a massive need right now, a collective need for godly leadership and influence in this hour. No wonder the late Dallas Willard was writing a little bit about what was happening in culture, and he said this, nothing has been able to transform the heart of darkness that lies deep in the breast of every human being. Political or social or psychological revolution. So obviously, he concluded this. So obviously, the problem is spiritual, and so must be the cure. That's a word. I want to give you two quick thoughts. One is these really are unprecedented times. It's been a rough road. You know, as a mental health therapist, leader of the American Association of Christian Counselors, we've talked a lot about what's happened just since COVID hit. The lockdowns and the loss and the loneliness and the racial tension and strife and the rioting and so much more, all the way to a recent assassination attempt. It was only intuitive that we would see spiking mental health issues, and we have soaring stress and anxiety, depression, even suicidality. And here's the kicker, especially among our children. The CDC recently reported that 57% of our daughters and our granddaughters, hear this, 57% of our daughters and granddaughters felt persistently sad and struggled with feelings of depression and despair. The CDC went also on to report in that same document that 30% of our daughters and our granddaughters had seriously contemplated suicide. 30%, that's 1 out of 3. Prior to all this, we had a mental health crisis. We don't have a mental health crisis anymore. We have a mental health disaster. People are exhausted. They're emotionally shot. They're broken like never before. The bottom line is life is different. People are filled with fear. But let me say this, unprecedented times, but God is working. I believe this, there's a stirring going on like I've never seen before. When you canvass what's happened over the last couple of years, you go to Asbury College, and something started there that started spreading across the country. Go to Harvest Crusade that was happening out in California with Greg Laurie, the Jesus Revolution, and more. Auburn University, we began to see what was happening there. Coaches like Hugh Freeze baptizing people, and it was stirring and going across the country. The box office started what? Spinning. Sound of Freedom defied all odds and soared and defied everything about Hollywood. The Supreme Court decisions that have been coming down, Dobbs and the religious liberty Coach Kennedy case and more. People are beginning to push back. Mama bears are showing up at school board meetings. CMT, when they tried to cancel Jason Aldean and that song that came out, Try That in a Small Town, it soared to #1. Target stores are getting the message. Bud Light's getting the message. Harvard's getting the message. Penn's getting the message. MIT's getting the message. Columbia University's getting the message. People are tired of being silenced and shamed and stigmatized. I talked to Pastor Jack Graham recently, and he said, Tim, I want you to know this. I believe this is a legacy moment. This is about our children and our grandchildren. This is a moment we have to step up and into. The real question is, what can and what will the righteous do? We need to love God, we need to love people, and we need to hold on and fight for truth. Richard Foster, I'm going to paraphrase him for a moment. He said, I believe heaven and earth are standing on tiptoes, awaiting the emerging of a spirit-led, a spirit-intoxicated people. A people who know the spirit of Emmanuel, which means God with us, and that their God is as real to them as the cloud was by day and the fire by night. But how heaven and earth are standing on tiptoes, awaiting a spirit-led, a spirit-intoxicated church, big C, to step up and into this moment. And God, let that be true. And all God's people said, amen, let it be true. Let's stop trying and let's start training in that direction. Let's get going. Let me wrap this up this way. We've learned in mental health the antidote to trauma, and you talk about trauma, we've been through it. The antidote to trauma is relationship. You know, when bombs are going off around you, the most beautiful sound in all the world is, Charlie, are you there? Charlie, Tim, I'm here. Rob, are you there? Tim, I'm here. Joe, are you there? I'm here. The church has to band together. We've got to get rid of our silo mentality and do something. Martin Marty was asked this about spirituality in modern day life. He said, do you think it's real? And he said, yes. But the second question in his answer are what caught my attention. The second question was, well, what do you think will happen? And Marty's response, and I'll paraphrase it again, it all depends on what the church will do with the opportunity that culture is giving to her. I know this. Thomas Paine once said this, these are the times that try the souls of men. Let it be said that all those who come behind us will find us collectively what? Faithful. And C.S. Lewis said it this way, the only thing that Christianity cannot be is moderately important. This is not a time for a confused church, you all. It's time for the church to rise up, be bold, be strong, and be courageous for such a time as this. May God be with you. Thank you.